All right, everyone, welcome back. I believe this is video lecture number 6. And in today's video, we will be talking about the different causes that could lead to a loss in species. So if you remember from the previous lecture video, we talked about extinction and extirpation and how the rate of extinction is currently increasing, and we're seeing a decrease in biodiversity. And so, yeah, in this lecture, we'll be looking at the different causes. So there are natural causes. Like I said, it's not just one day humans showed up, and when we showed up, that's when species decided to die out. There were natural causes along the way that caused vast extinctions of species. And so some of the natural causes include volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, asteroids, floods, and fires. And also, if there is lack of food from a species being overpopulated, that causes competition, and that species could die out. And also disease. So in this picture, this is a Tasmanian devil. Scientists are currently quite concerned for the Tasmanian devil because there is a contagious cancerous disease that's giving the Tasmanian devils these facial tumors, and the Tasmanian devils are showing that so far no immunity at all to this contagious disease. And so definitely something that could wipe out a species. There's also overspecialization. So overspecialization occurs when an organism has adaptations that suit them to a very narrow set of environmental conditions. You usually see overspecialization happen in environmental conditions that are typically very, very stable. So tropical areas or areas that experience similar weather all year round. And also being overspecialized has puts a species more at risk for extinction. If there's not much variability, say, in their diet, then if that resource goes away, that could cause them to go extinct. For an example, pandas are pretty reliant on bamboo as their main dietary resource. And so if bamboo all of a sudden got wiped out, that would cause the pandas to go extinct. Same thing with koalas. They're pretty exclusively reliant on eucalyptus leaves to make up their diet. Eucalyptus leaves disappear, so would the koalas. And then also coral reefs. So coral reefs are super specialized. They like a specific temperature, a specific salinity. They like specific CO2 and oxygen levels. And if those conditions aren't met, it causes the coral reefs to die out. And we've already seen this happen in multiple coral reefs around the world. And unfortunately, there's quite a few species that make their home in coral reefs. And so when the coral reef dies, that causes the species that live there to have to go search in other places for a new habitat, and could cause a species to die out as well too. Now, there are many human influences that could cause species to become extinct. Which include, or just the species to decrease in numbers as well. One of those examples is habitat loss, either through urbanization or extensive farming. So if you remember from the previous video, I showed you land use change over time. This is a similar image here. And I've also included the environmental health and socioeconomic performance scales as well too. So the first image here you see is 1910. If you look in the environmental health, things are looking pretty lovely. Lots of grizzly bear habitat, marine life is doing good. The diversity in the forest is doing really good. Water quality is doing great. There's not much CO2 emissions. Very few people to feed. Not much not much of the forest is being harvested, and not as much water has to be used. And keep an eye on the scales and compare it with the land use over time. Just remember, so like the yellow here is the grasslands, green is forested area, purple is the urban areas, and then the red is the agricultural areas. So we're going to skip ahead to 1950. You see an increase in the grasslands changing into agricultural areas, increase in urbanization, a bit of a loss of the forested areas. Now, if you really look at the environmental health, you see those bars have gone down, but the socioeconomic performance bars have gone up. So we see more people more people then have to be fed. So of course, we're going to need more agricultural areas. More oil is being produced, more water is being consumed. And so with the increase in population, that comes with a toll on the environment. Again, we're going to fast forward here to the year 2000. You see a hard hit on the environmental health scale bars with water quality going down, environmental diversity going down, the marine life going down, and same, the poor grizzly bear habitat has just gone from a bunch of area to like nothing. And of course we have more people, so meaning more people to feed, and more water is being consumed, more resources are being used. And then yeah, this is 2020, huge urban areas, very little grassland. Since we have a huge population, we need to sustain that population with agricultural, a huge agriculture landscape. And it unfortunately has a huge impact on the environmental health. So it really shows how the ways we are using our land has an impact on environment, health as well. We can create habitat loss through recreation areas as well. So areas like ski resorts or camping. This creates a loss of movement corridors for different species. So bears, wolves, elk, caribou, they take up a large area for their habitat. They travel quite a bit. And when we create these areas, it breaks up their corridor and causes the species to interact more with one another. More resources are being competed for and could cause a decrease in species. Deforestation also, again, can cause a huge habitat loss, especially in Brazil with the Amazon rainforest. We see more burning, some clear-cut areas. They use a method in Brazil called slash and burn, where they essentially cut down the trees and then burn the under canopy. And they hope that the ash from the burning will soak into the soil and help provide sort of a carbon organic base for agriculture purpose, because they're typically cutting down the rainforest to create these massive agricultural monoculture plots. And the Amazon rainforest actually has very poor soil conditions. You would think with the amount of biodiversity that, yeah, that's fertile soil, but it's actually not very fertile at all. And because of the amount of rain that the forest sees, it actually leaches all the nutrients out of the soil, causing the forest to have really poor soil conditions. And then habitat fragmentation, again, it's by adding roads, it creates a barrier for animals to have to cross and causes more animals to live in a smaller space and have to compete for resources. And again, poor soil for agriculture. This relates back to that slash and burn topic I was just mentioning here in the Amazon rainforest. They are cutting down these areas for agriculture, and the soil is not even that good for farming in. In Brazil, since the recent new president was elected, we've seen an increase in deforestation rates, more so than in past decades. And it's mainly because the new president is pretty anti-environmental. So you can see in this graph here, in the past decade, we've actually seen quite a decrease in deforestation. However, in these past couple of years, we're seeing an increase. This is from 2018. It's actually gone up quite a bit in the past couple of years. And damming could also cause habitat loss. So when you create a dam, it creates this reservoir that takes up more area than if the river was just running through. So with the image on the right here, this is the proposed plans for the Springbank Reservoir. And so we have the Bow River here, and they would have a diversion channel that would take the water from the Bow River and store it in a reservoir. And it's controversial in that Calgary would really benefit because if there was another flood, the city would be protected. However, the residents of Springbank do not want the reservoir because it's going to take away from people's homes. There are residential areas and agriculture areas used over here. It can affect the habitat of any species that live in this area. And so we're taking away habitat from a species in this sense. Humans also contribute pollution, which can cause a loss of species. Pollution through either emissions, so an increase in CO2 from industrial resources, oil spills. So these are images from the BP oil spill where tons and tons of oil leaked into the Gulf there. And it's very difficult to clean up, and marine species were really affected. And yeah, it's very difficult to clean up. We pollute through plastic. Plastic that's not recycled or reused properly ends up in the trash, and a lot of the trash somehow makes its way out into the oceans. And so we have these things called huge garbage patches that are in multiple different oceans. And you guys may have heard of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is just these huge sort of areas of circulating plastic trash. And it's not like an island of trash like many people think. It's actually more like a chunky noodle soup, because you can still sail through this trash, but it's super dense in the middle of just plastic bits. And as the plastic breaks down, organisms like different marine species think this plastic is food, and they eat it, and then it gets caught up in their system and they die. And then also pesticides kill off species. When you're just trying to get rid of some weeds, it can have an effect on like the surrounding organisms as well. Some other human influences include overhunting. And so I want to put emphasis on the over part here, because there's nothing wrong with hunting. It's when you overhunt, especially species that are currently threatened or endangered. Actually, overhunting led to the extirpation of the plains bison. So back in the early 1900s, the bison were hunted by the colonials in order to make the indigenous reliant on colonials for food, because the indigenous used the bison as their main source of, it was their main diet. And so by hunting these bison, like they weren't even eating the meat, they were just doing it to make the indigenous reliant on us. And as well, in introducing an exotic or non-native species. So purple loosestrife is an exotic species. And when it was brought over, it aggressively spread into the wetlands, and it altered the natural habitat. And the only way to control this without spraying pesticides was using a biological control. And the biological control that they used was the European weevil. And it only eats purple loosestrife. And so it protected the other vegetation, because the weevil didn't eat the other vegetation, only the loosestrife. And so by bringing in the weevil to eat the purple loosestrife, it helped the native species regain their natural habitat. So in the picture on the left here, it's from 1998. We see that the wetland has been overrun by purple loosestrife. And then they introduced the European weevil, and a year later in 1999, you see a lot of the native species has reclaimed the land back. And that's pretty much it for this lecture video. In the next one, we will be talking about ways we can reduce our impact. And yeah, if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks for listening.